Newsfirst Newsline with Fertilizer.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. My guest this evening is Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament representing the SJB. Very good evening to you, Mr. Eran Wickramaratne.
Good evening.
I noticed that you're in casuals, in civilian attire. Why?
I had a little bit more space today in terms of timing because we are actually not in Parliament, though it's a parliamentary day.
Aha, now I understand very much indeed. Now the point is this, the Parliament cost something like what, 4.5 million, 5 million? That was before all the lockdowns and all that, so it probably costs more now. Isn't it a waste of our money that you're not going in there and doing your job?
In a democracy, Parliament is an absolutely essential. There's no question about it, because people elect us and people send us to Parliament. And our main functions in Parliament is, one, it's a legislative function, making law, and the other is representing the views of people in the debates and letting the executive and the government know.
If I put it to you, Mr. Wickramaratne, that the smaller party, the one that doesn't have the majority, is not really the opposition, but it is the alternative government. Am I right in saying that?
I don't really get at what you are actually saying.
Well, because you're not really the opposition. You are the alternative government. Should be ready, like that, to take over the reins of power, just in case they fall flat on their face.
Yeah, I think that I must say that we are presently the opposition, right? And we are the alternative government, and we are in fact actually preparing to, because I think that we will have to take the responsibility for government much faster than we actually anticipated. What actually has happened over the last couple of days is, right, the behavior in Parliament has been totally unacceptable. And
more unacceptable than the chili throwing and the jab?
Yeah, it almost came to what happened in October 2018. Right?
So it's a regular occurrence.
Yeah, but what was really painstaking to look at is that when an opposition member who wanted his time extended, Manusha Nanayakara went up to the speaker and tried to explain it, that very unusual, that the chief government whip actually stormed the place, and then he crossed the chair of the speaker, because in Parliament there are certain traditions, you never are able to cross. You're either on the government side or on the opposition side. You can't be threatening in any way. And certainly this has never happened in the history of Parliament, that somebody holding such high position like a chief opposition whip will do such a thing. You know, there are different roles different people play. Backbenchers play a role, right? But people in the front rows and the people who have responsibilities have to maintain the decor of Parliament, have to see that the standing orders are being honoured, have to see that the Constitution is being honoured. And in this particular case, there is a Powers and Privileges Act. Originally, I think it was 1957, but it has been amended several times up to 1997, you see, and you have to act within that. And clearly, the behavior that we saw, right, the threatening behavior, because on the following day, there were some members of Parliament who came into the opposition lobby to attack Manusha Nanayakara, and he had to be removed from Parliament. They had to actually take him through the Speaker's door, hide him somewhere, and then get him into a vehicle and get him off Parliament.
Oh, so, you mean there were a bunch of thugs waiting to get him?
Well, there were members of Parliament who you may call thugs, right?
Well, if somebody is coming after someone outside of the law, what's the word? It's thug.
Yes, so it's not proper parliamentary behavior. And the Speaker here needs to assert himself, right? And the Speaker should have made basically a ruling. The Speaker has announced today that he is appointing a committee to go into the incidents and inquire into the incidents. But I think that alone is insufficient, because members of Parliament need to feel secure in really walking in there freely, making their views known, taking on the debates and so forth and so on. I even heard members of parliament today from government criticizing the speaker. So the gentleman is getting criticized by us in the opposition and also getting criticized by members of parliament, including the chief opposition whip. If you listen to his speech today, you will find that as well. Actually, what should be done is, if he was just to look at the film footage, everything is in parliament is on film footage, he will then see that the chief opposition whip has crossed the line and he should take some action. Now some say that Manusha Nanayakkara's, some of the content of his speech was unacceptable. Certainly, we are not going to condone with anything which is unacceptable. That there is a process there. The speaker can look at it, the speaker can expunge it, the speaker can demand that an apology is made, and there are so many things that the speaker can do. But a parliamentary debate, right, has to be resolved in that particular manner, not in a threat of any physical harm to any parliamentarian, and that is deplorable. It's what we saw in 2018, where some of those people, and we are talking the same individuals, breaking chairs, as you said, throwing things, books and other things, and behaving like that. So that's completely to be deplored. That's why we have boycotted parliament, and we haven't gone into the chamber today. We will not be going into the chamber of parliament unless the speaker is able to show that he is in control of the House of Parliament.
And when is he likely to demonstrate that he is in control? How is he going to do that? Is he going to call Sajid Premadas and tell him, do turn up, I want to have a chat with you?
Well, there are different ways in actually doing that.
Yeah.
He can have a discussion, right? He can make a statement, right? There are various ways in doing that.
Yeah.
But we are still to see that that is being done. It hasn't been done, and therefore, till it's done, we will not be participating in the parliamentary process, because it's really demeaning to participate in it.
Is there any important bill? I know everything's important, but is there anything particularly significant that they may pass, taking advantage of the fact that you all are not in?
No, Parliament's present debating the budget in the committee stage. It's the last week of it, right? And therefore, the budget discussion is going. It's very important for the country, and we want to participate in it. But if the Speaker cannot really control the House of Parliament, right, then there are other provisions where we may have to resort to in the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, you see, and maybe we may have to go outside Parliament, right, in actually getting a resolution to the problem. We don't want to do that, but if we are forced to, we will act like that.
Right. Now then, talking about strong governance, or the lack of it, we have the Hippo Spirit, that the ship with all that sort of dodgy fertilizer, or some sort of not acceptable, unacceptable fertilizer, according to some of the reports. It's now winging its way, or sailing its way back to Singapore, promising to take to go for arbitration. It's obviously there's a problem in terms of the conditions that were put in the letter of credit, and now everyone's hiding and scurrying around. But all this scurrying around means that the republic, the people, are losing money when we can't afford to lose. Well, when is this all going to stop? I know in your government you all had to contend with the one matter, the bond scam, but over here we've got so many blessed things that's gone wrong, and it is not what 6.9 million people voted this person in. You know, what's going on, Eran? When are we going to stop all this rubbish?
Yeah, so the incident you referred to, I'll call it an incident because you are importing, organic fertilizer,
Yeah.
and then you are getting generally standard reports from institutions. The Sri Lankan institutions have basically said this fertilizer is not acceptable. Generally, if it's a condition of the LC, basically you have to take it and go away. There's no discussion about it. Banks won't be paying out on the LCs because the LC conditions haven't been met, and so forth. So it comes with a bit of a surprise that it's going for arbitration, because if it's going for arbitration, that means then the government has conceded that maybe they don't have too much faith in the Sri Lankan standards institutions, right, the reports that have been given on the fertilizer. So which is really the government saying that its own institutions maybe are questionable, which is very, very unfortunate. So this is a very unusual situation.
But there's also something far more significant and dramatic that is about to happen. And that is, this morning I was speaking to the managing director of an industrial, they're manufacturers of various different things. And he said, I'm fine for now. He said, but come January, I might have to close it down. And I said, why? But you've got so many thousands of people working for you. And he said, well, all our LCs are just sort of, piling up, sticking up in the queue, if you like, because the banks don't have the dollars. And so if the goods don't come by January, he told me, he said, you can quote me, he said, I will have to shut it down. And that would mean that he'd have to let go of people, jobs. And you can see the impact then. It'd be further damaging to people. What would the SJB do to get dollars in? Let's say that for whatever reason you're in power tomorrow morning or next Monday. What would your party do?
Yes, so the issue, as you said, is not just fertilizer. The fertilizer decision was the wrong decision, right? It has caused huge problems for the farmers in the country. The harvest has gone down, incomes have gone down. Then it led to a problem, we have a problem with gas at the moment. There's an energy crisis building up. Then we have an electricity problem. And then we have a dollar problem, as you have just surfaced now, and the dollar problem is a very big problem.
It's a significant problem.
And then you keep hearing, right, senior officials in government, both in the Ministry of Finance as well as in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, telling this story about nothing to worry, we will take care of it. And every day we are hearing this story. And you just surfaced a story of a businessman telling you that his business depends on certain imports. The LCs are piling up, but there's no way that he could actually open the LCs, and therefore he will be out of business. Just today, right, a lady who had worked for the United Nations for 27 or 29 years, she said to me, and she said she had opened an RFC account, being a Sri Lankan, and her pension, and she said it was a small pension under $1,000, which was coming in, she said, monthly. And she had, I think, a sick husband. And she said that she was trying to convert some of that money because she needed the rupees, right, to take care of the bill. Central Bank takes it. And then they've come up with this, to say these things. And I think we really need to be careful of this kind of nonsensical economic theory. We should go by what has basically been practiced and proven by the vast majority, that the money printing has led to inflation, and it's leading to inflation in a big way. There are other factors also, that I would grant, but money printing certainly leads to inflation. And what kind of inflation? Runaway inflation. Right? If you look at food prices, vegetable prices, I must confess that I don't go to the shop myself to buy the vegetables, but I inquired very carefully and very closely, and I found out even the basic things that we eat every day, whether it was the carrots, it was the beans and the basic vegetables, 1 kilo has gone up by more than 100 rupees in 1 month. So you can imagine the escalation of inflation and how inflation is rising. So your question was, okay, this is the crisis. What will you do?
What would you do? Yeah.
What will you do if you come in? I must say this very clearly. There is no quick solution, but there is a solution.
Which is?
Because if people come and say there is a quick solution, don't believe them. That's why you voted this bunch of people in who really...
So what is the solution?
Yes, so there is no quick solution for this. So there's a whole range of things that need to be done. Financial markets work on, basically financial markets work on trust, right, that people have. Who is behind the financial markets? Who is making the decisions? Do they know what they are doing? I think that's a very, very important thing. That's how actually markets work, right? So, and then financial markets work on the basis of the rule of law, and that you are basically can be trusted that you will keep to agreements and things like that. That's how financial markets work. Investment comes because people believe in the system, people believe that what they have signed will be honored. Now that's a problem you started with today, the fertilizer problem, for example, right? People are losing faith in this government, right? Because nothing is honored. Even an LC is not honored. That's what they are really telling you. Leave alone agreements. So I think that the first thing we will establish is the rule of law, and that we will honor agreements, we will honor international treaties. We have a track record of doing so when you look at the people who are involved there. The next thing we will do is we will push for consolidation, fiscal consolidation.
Right. Let's discuss fiscal consolidation after this short break, in which we look at the headlines from the Newsfirst primetime news team. We'll see you on the other side.
Newsfirst Newsline with Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with the Member of Parliament representing the SJB, Mr. Eran Wickramaratne. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you must have heard a sound earlier, and that wasn't a gas thing exploding. Believe me, we haven't got one here. All right, it was something else. And I hope a viewer says that Newsline is something scary. I think he's not referring to the sound that came out, but rather the news about the economy. It is scary, isn't it?
It is.
There's no dollars. There's an industrialist who makes all sorts of things, and he says, well, look, if I can't get my hardware in, my material, the raw material in, I'm going to have to close it down.
Yeah, so which means that it's going to create more unemployment in the country.
Yeah.
So apart from shortages, like basic things like food and medicine, when we talked about this some time ago, people thought we were dreaming. When we said that there will be an energy crisis, people thought that it can't be true. When we said that there will be a dollar shortage, people said, no, it won't happen. All these things are happening. Runaway inflation is building. So apart from the rule of law, fiscal consolidation, you have to deal with the basics in the economy. Revenues have to go up, and basically expenditure has to be controlled to reduce the gap. Then if you want to really close your gap in your balance of payments, you have to give preference to exports. If you are giving preference to exporters, you have to have a competitive exchange rate.
So the SJB would float the exchange rate?
You have to have a competitive exchange rate. What kind of nonsense is going on now? They are saying the exchange rate is about 200 rupees, right? And then they themselves are saying that people actually cashing their dollars at 240. Today's news has it, newspapers have it.
Look,
governor of the central bank is saying it. I don't know whether he doesn't have any shame in actually saying it. And then they are making an announcement saying that, but if you remit it through us, we will give it to you, we will give you 10 rupees more. What kind of nonsense are these people talking about? Do you think that the people who work hard overseas earn $200, $300 a month? Are they not rational that they want the best rate that's going? Right. So these people haven't really understood the fundamentals. You're trying to control the exchange rate and the interest rates.
Mr. Wickramaratne, whether the exchange rate is floated and whether it's 250 or 60 to the dollar, or whether it is 210 or 220 or whatever to the dollar, isn't the fact of the matter very simple? There are no dollars.
Yes, there are no dollars. So to attract the dollars,
we had the BOI team all resign.
Yeah, so exactly. This whole thing is in
because we need dollars, so they resigned.
Yeah, this is in total confusion.
I saw two tourists today. They looked like tourists. They were walking past the hotel. I was almost tempted to stop and do this and say thank you for coming, because I presume they're paying their hotel bill with dollars.
Yes. So we have a serious problem. So we have to, if you ask me what the SJB will do is, we will, after getting fiscal consolidation processes in place, we will give prominence to exports. We can't do that by restricting imports, because exporters need to bring their goods in freely so that they could increase their exports. We will also bring SMEs into the export market, not just only the big players. We will look at agriculture, and I think agriculture, we will give them certain technological support and subsidies so that agriculture also could be converted to some extent into exports after basically taking care of our own food security will be a priority. But there are certain agricultural products that you can export. So exports will receive prime of place. Small and medium industry exports, they have two problems. One is a problem of quality, and the other is they don't know where their markets are. That's where government comes in. That's where an SJB government will come in. We will make sure that their quality will improve, the SMEs. We will focus on giving them the subsidies there, even in technology, to see quality improvements, even in the small and medium industry sector. And then they can't find the markets like the big companies. We will intervene, right, government intervention. We will use the chambers and others in actually finding the markets for these people. So one way the dollars will come is by increasing your exports. The other way dollars will come is basically through foreign direct investment. Nobody is interested in this country at the moment with the confusion. FDI, people are just running away.
Is there a
right?
trust deficit?
There is definitely. Do you think after this incident, we put a lot of trust in Chinese investments coming to this country? I like to see Chinese investments coming in under the present circumstances.
You mean you talk about the hippo spirit?
Yeah, I mean every single thing that's going on, right, is not building trust. FDI is to come in when your main arm of your government is your board of investment. 20 years ago, I was a director on the board of investment.
Did you retire? Did you resign?
No, I didn't resign. We did our best. I was a banker then. We did our best to project Sri Lanka to increase the FDIs. What's it today, 20 years later? It's in a total mess. There's absolute confusion there, right? The people are saying there's too much interference. What is going on, we don't know. We are not clear of the policy. The board resigns. Now the president says he's not accepting the resignations. I think there's a huge problem. We need FDIs, but even our internal organization in the country is in confusion. I just don't know. That's why I'm saying that these people have no clear vision, no proper policy, and not got the right people to execute the policy.
And that is the problem.
That is the problem. It's a huge problem because very fundamental things are not being understood.
But the government is losing all sorts of on all sorts of areas. They recently, the government recently, Mr. Azad Saleh was released of all charges, and it was obviously some blessed thing that was all trumped up because clearly the court had nothing bad to say about this fellow, and he was released. Right? I'm just mentioning that because of the rule of law they've got a problem with, they've got a trust deficit. The international community, President Biden didn't invite them for some meeting on democracy, and so on and so forth. Have we not become the laughing stock of this world?
Yeah, because you mentioned Azad Saleh, I must say this shows how unjust the Sri Lankan system is. Yeah, you have held a person for months and months and
9 months.
9 months, and you have not been able to prove a single thing. So why aren't you producing the person faster in the courts? If the person has done wrong, the courts decide. If the person hasn't done wrong, the person must be released much faster. Because you asked me about what the SJB will do.
Yes.
We will have a much more open policy, right, in terms of the economy. We will, right, you take education for example. What on earth are we doing? 225 members of parliament there. I asked this simple question. How many of your children actually go to a Sri Lankan university? How many of your children? Whatever your parties, you may be JVP, you may be SLPP, you may be SLFP, you may be UNP, you may be SJB, you may be TNA, you may be some other party, right? Hardly anybody goes into a Sri Lankan university. But all MPs are completely committed to giving the best education to their children. But we don't talk about these subjects, right? These leaders have their children of all these parties in private education. They say something publicly which is untrue about their own families. So why are you blocking others from getting a proper education? 190 people received A-level results suitable to go to a university. Only 35,000 are entering the Sri Lankan universities. What about the other 100,000? Why have some of these political parties, particularly the left-wing political parties, why have they blocked? Why have they blocked, right, other educational institutions, government, non-government, and private sector? we will open this up. It's about opportunity. We must create opportunity. What a hard time they have given to the middle class parents who have children studying overseas. They can't remit the fees at the moment. I think we have to come out of this crap, right? Basically trying to protect this thing. Our young people, everybody deserves an education. I was glad to hear Dinesh Gunawardene say that in Parliament the other day, everybody deserves an education. And I went further to tell him that it has to be then government and non-government as well. Right? For years, these people have ruined the system. Right? Decades ago, there was the opening of a private medical college. Right?
Yes, yeah.
Some of these parties got on the streets, right, and shut it down. Recently, SITEM, right, was shut down by some of these parties. And so all of these people are projecting themselves as alternatives. What kind of nonsense is this? Right? We can't run away from reality and delude ourselves. We have to be honest with ourselves. If we really want this country to come forward and to grow,
yeah,
it's through opening up the system and having access to education to everybody, while we strongly protect those who are vulnerable and those who are on low incomes. And the SJB is committed to do that those who are vulnerable, whoever they may be, that we will protect them through our social protection systems.
And also, I need to also mention that today the courts dropped 11 charges relating to the Public Property Act on that infamous bond matter. And I'm sure that our primetime news will carry more information. But that's another one that has fallen flat on its face. Well, half of the 22 charges have been dropped. And so that suggests to me that there is a serious problem in doing things properly. Azad Sali was one matter that you mentioned. I'm mentioning to you the case of Messrs. Aloysius Karunaker and others, right? And let's see. Do come back again and talk to us. Thank you very much, Eran Wickramaratne. That's the way it was on Newsline Live this evening. It's now time for that fabulous program, the Primetime News from the News First team. Take care, and as always, God bless you.